1. Jest of Giles Head, Book 1, Bloodkin, by Kathy Ashford, moi, Chapter 19. I thought Charlie would go to pieces, but he was curiously calm. He insisted on helping Min Eve, who was racked with terrible guilt about the fate of one of her charges, organise a memorial service at the temple before a carriage was ordered to take Odette's remains back to Chanyo. It was a solemn group that met at the Shivering Thistle after the service. Anna had dismissed any business she had for the afternoon and invited us all up to the private lounge for a sort of wake. Snow had indeed begun to fall outside, and as we hurried from the temple, my arm around Sella, the tears almost froze on her face. O'Malley sent up pitchers of warm mulled wine, and Fiona had blended up a special mixture of red, white and blue moss to help us relax and grieve for the pretty journeyman who we'd barely got the chance to know. Yule was a festive occasion. Traditionally, people stayed up until midnight the night before, eating and drinking and celebrating, but this Yule's Eve had nothing festive about it at all. My friends from the hall began drifting home in groups late that night, but Charlie seemed unwilling to go, and I was unwilling to leave without him. He'd been so awfully strong. While the women had spent the past 2 days weeping, and the men had been coping in silence, it had been Charlie who had dealt with the temple and organised the carriage for Odette's body and helped Min Eve compose the letter to her family. I must have fallen asleep by the fire, for when I opened my eyes everyone had gone, and the sounds from the bar were the muted noises of the end of the night. I heard quiet weeping and turned my head to see Charlie, curled up beside Anna, his face buried in her shoulder as she cradled his head and stroked his hair gently. Before I could pretend to be still asleep, Anna noticed me and sat up slightly. Charlie sniffed, wiped his eyes on his sleeve and looked over. "Oh, hey Jazz. You fell asleep and we didn't want to wake you." Ugh, I felt groggy, sat up with a struggle. "What's the time?" "Late. Past 3, I guess." "Come, let's get you two to bed." Anna rose and helped Charlie off the couch. He clung to her as she led us downstairs, nodding at O'Malley propped up on the bar. "It's too late for you to go back to the hall. Come, stay at my place." I could think of no argument as we left the tavern and walked the short distance to her apartment, her guards following at a discreet distance. There were still muted sounds of revelry drifting down from the other apartments in the quarter, curiously alien, but the frozen streets were empty, the globes sending ghostly tendrils of light through the snow. Beside the entrance to Fiona's shop, she stared at a door, which unlocked with a click. She pushed her way in, barely glancing at the guard seated just inside. Leading us up the stairs to the top floor, she used Kevin to unlock the door that led to her apartment. At any other time, I would have been impressed by the gorgeous panoramic view of the city and lake, swirling and dusted with snow like ice and sugar. But now it just made me feel lonely. Charlie had not let go of Anna's hand the entire time, and now I wished more than anything that I had Sally with me. Anna pulled the heavy curtains and quickly lit the fire, settling Charlie and me in front of it and tucking blankets around us. She ducked out to another room and returned with glasses and brandy that she poured for the 3 of us. She had a small pouch of Fiona's special blend and filled an elegant hookah on a low table. She sparked the moss and replaced the lid, handing us a hose each. The cold outside had woken me up like a slap to the face, but here, snuggled in a blanket, with the fire and brandy warming my body and the moss stilling my mind, I was very quickly sleepy again. We sat in silence for some time. Charlie finished his brandy and Anna poured him another. "How did she die?" I glanced with surprise at Charlie. He was the one who had organised with the temple morgue for the transportation of Odette's body. I assumed he would have been told it if Odette had died any other way than drowning. "Her throat was slit," Anna said flatly. A horrible sensation crawled up my spine. Charlie just nodded and stared into his drinks. We were quiet again for a few minutes until Charlie finished his second brandy. So they're taking Mingles. It was more a statement than a question, and Anna hesitated for a moment. Yes. Not Niathi. No. Not Niathi bloods. No. Just Mingles. Yes. Why? Charlie whispered, his voice hoarse and ragged. I don't know. He sobbed once, quietly. Oh, sweet little bitch. Poor Charlie. Anna rose. Come on, Joseph. I'll show you to your bed, yes? Yes, please. I stood and followed her, a bit wobbly, into a small side room with a single bed, generously covered in fur rugs. There you go. Sleep well, Joseph. Anna? Yes? You will look after him, won't you? She flashed me a ghost of a smile. Of course, dear. Don't worry about him. I was worried, but when I pulled off my robe and crawled into bed, I barely laid my head on the pillow before I was asleep. The next day, it was almost mid-afternoon before I woke. I could hear the sounds of Charlie and Anna talking quietly in Niathi outside my room. Heaving myself out of bed, I pulled on my robes and straightened the blankets before going out to find them. They turned out to be in the kitchen, cooking up bacon and eggs for our breakfast. Ah, here he is. Sleep well, Jazz? Yeah, thanks, Charlie. How are you? Oh, as well as can be expected, I suppose. After we had eaten, Charlie and I left Anna's and made our way back to the hall. The skies had cleared and the remnants of snow glittered on the stonework of the quarter. As we were leaving, Anna had kissed Charlie on the cheek and grasped my hand in hers. If there's anything you need, Joseph, anything at all, please come to me. I had promised, and we departed. The streets were busy with Yuletide revellers, hurrying to or back from the temple. This normal activity seemed to me to belong to a different world, a world where Mingles weren't being abducted, and pretty young journeymen didn't have their throats slit before being dumped in the lake. Street vendors had set up stalls on intersections selling roasted meats, mulled wine, and slices of Yule log, a chocolate confection of rolled sponge. These we passed as if in a bubble. I thought about the goodbye kiss Anna had given Charlie. Maybe something good had come out of the day before. I needed there to have been something good, so I asked him. Did you and Anna, He was miles away. Oh, what? No, nothing happened, really. We just, snuggled. Snuggled. Well, I suppose that was good. We arrived at the hall the same time the others were coming back from the temple. Sella, hollow-eyed and a bit weepy, gave a little gasp when she saw me. Sweet little bitch, Joseph! She ran to me and threw her arms around my neck. I thought something had happened to you, she cried as I stroked her hair. We stayed at Anna's last night. Anna's? She pulled back, instantly suspicious. I stiffened, a bit annoyed. Why shouldn't I have stayed at Anna's? It's all right. Charlie stayed with her. She put me to bed in the spare room. Oh, she relaxed. Oh, did they... I looked around to see if anyone was listening, but all the others had already gone upstairs. Nah. They just cuddled, apparently. Oh, well, that would have been nice. I didn't get much sleep last night. I could do with the cuddle. I looked at her, surprised. But we're not allowed to do anything. She gave me a little smile. Joseph, I meant actually just a cuddle. I think I need to take a nap. Would you... She hesitated for a second. Would you stay with me? I kissed her on the forehead. Of course. Come on, let's go up. In her bedroom, I pulled off my robe and, still wearing my long johns, crawled into the bed beside her. She lay facing away from me, and I slung one arm over her and pulled her close. Even though her hair tickled my nose, it was warm and comfortable, pressed up against her. "Joseph," she said sleepily. I think I love you." "Oh, hell! What do I say to that? Thank you? No. Oh, hell no. Could I pretend I hadn't heard her? Nope. Oh, shit. Shit! I think I love you too." She sighed happily and snuggled back into me, pulling my arm around her tighter. Before long, her breathing deepened and evened, and I could tell she was asleep. I extricated myself from her grasp and gently eased myself out of her bed. I grabbed my robe off the floor and tiptoed to the door, gently closing it but quietly behind me. Emma had just entered the living room, and I raised one finger to my lips and pointed towards Stella's closed door. She eyed me pointedly, and I belatedly realized I was still only in my underwear. "Oh, shit, sorry, hang on," I muttered quietly and pulled my robe over my head. "You weren't..." "No, of course not. We were just cuddling." "Good. I hope you're looking after her, Joseph." "Oh God, what had I gotten myself into?" Yeah, I'm trying." "Well, that's good then." She let me escape past her, and I almost ran down the hallway to my room. Charlie was lying on the couch trying to read as I came in and sat down heavily in one of the armchairs. "Shit." Charlie looked up at me. "What's wrong, boy?" Stella. She just told me she thinks she loves me." Charlie chuckled quietly. "And what did you say?" I said I think I love her too." "And do you?" I groaned. "I don't know. We haven't even been together 2 months. We haven't even, been together. Not properly." "Shit!" Charlie nodded at me, smiling. "Don't worry about it, JJ. Girls get to that point much faster than guys do. Just roll with it until you really mean it." So I said the right thing. "Well, what else could you have said? Thanks?" He laughed. "Well, I was glad I hadn't said that then." "No, unless you want a crazy, angry Stella on your hands, and you think you've got a future together, you said the right thing. But I don't even know if I want a future with her. Everything's just so messed up. I don't know. Well, nobody can say what will happen in the future, so try not to worry about it." Easier said than done, I thought, levering myself off the chair. "Yeah, well, I'm gonna go have a bath." Charlie grinned and picked up his book. "Good. You probably stink." The academy had a 2-week Yuletide holiday from classes, and the next day most of the other Bloodkin took their mentors and went home to see their families. Mantley took Sarah on the ferry to Nello, and Stella and Emma went up to Stella's mansion on the hill. Donnick and Salmok left early with their mentors. If they rode through the tunnel, they only had to stop for one night at an inn before reaching Ryeholm. Dunkel had decided to stay in the hall for the holidays. The trip to and from Talès would have taken about a week, and we'd already used a few days of the break. Jail's Head was also too far away for such a short holiday, so Telgith and I stayed put. Lalitha hadn't even considered going home. Apparently Lalasol in the middle of winter was bloody miserable, and almost inaccessible this time of year. She certainly had no love for her hometown or family, which she hardly ever talked about, so the population of the hall was halved by the end of the day. The night before, Min Eve had tried valiantly to create a festive atmosphere at dinner. She had decorated the table with boughs of pine and cedar, and we even had candles perched in her best silver candlesticks. We had sipped mulled wine and watched the sun go down on the shortest day of the year through the windows of the common room, pale orange fingers stretching weakly across the city. But as hard as Min Eve had tried, this Yule was not a cheerful occasion. We had eaten the special Yuletide feast mostly in silence, and then we'd all gone to bed early, feeling emotionally and physically drained. The next few days were quiet and a bit strange. We four Bloodkin left spent most of our time in the common room, playing cards or reading books. The others had gone to raid Charlie's bookshelf, as he had a pretty good selection of novels written in human. I thought it odd that a Niathi man would read so much in human, but when I asked him about it, he just shrugged. Novels in Niathi are nice, but they're a bit long-winded and poetic and, well, boring. Human books have much more adventure and sex. New Year's Eve loomed closer, and we could see the castle being readied for the arrival of the Queen. She and her advisor and the rest of the important government ministers would already be travelling from Fortesta. They were to arrive on New Year's Eve, and would welcome in the new year in the new city with a big banquet at the castle. Talgoth spent a fair bit of time fantasizing about the food that would be served at the banquet. With so many less of us to feed, the hall kitchen was taking a break from serving us the usual hearty fare, and we lived on simple meals of soups and breads. The snow had closed in again not long after Yule, and by the time New Year's Eve arrived, we were suffering from a touch of cabin fever, itching to get out and about. The day was strangely warm for the middle of winter, with an odd hot breeze blowing in from the northwest. We decided to go and watch the royal parade as the Queen arrived in the city. It seemed like everyone else in Lille had the same idea, because the edges of the main road were crammed with people, all waiting to get a glimpse of Queen Thaelig. Our little group had wandered out of the quarter and past the temple, and managed to get a view of the road just before the bridge to the castle. Vendors carried trays of food through the crowd, and Thomas stopped one, grabbing us each a couple of small meat pies, paying in coins from the hall purse. Finally, around the corner came the royal procession. Weirdly enough, I felt an excitement grip at my stomach. Ever since I had noticed it at Samhain, every time I went to the temple I looked at the portrait of the Queen. I couldn't help it. And here I was, about to catch a glimpse of the real thing. Leading the parade were royal guards on big black horses, dressed in the royal livery of blue and gold. Carriages followed, full of government ministers. The crowd cheered and waved, and somewhat politely, for we certainly weren't all waiting there to see boring officials trundle past. Eventually, the procession neared its end, and two serious-looking Niathi rode past, followed by an open carriage that contained a tiny, creased old man. The advisor, I guessed, as everyone clapped and cheered as the ancient man smiled happily and waved gently at the crowd. But when we saw the white horse stepping daintily in behind the carriage, the crowd went properly mental. There, in royal blue riding robes, her silvery blonde hair streaming out behind her in the breeze, was Queen Thaelig. She kept one firm hand on the reins as she waved to the crowd, a genuinely pleased smile lighting her noble face. "Oh man, she is such a babe," I heard Talgoth whisper. Even he was slightly awed by the ceremony of the occasion. Babe wasn't really the right word at all. With her long, strong nose, wide jaw and startling clear blue eyes, she looked regal. Even though she hadn't been born to the position, she looked like a queen. I could see why the masses had voted for this captivating young woman. And she looked strong, perched up there on her horse. She looked powerful. My heart thudded in my chest as she passed us, then seemed to stop altogether, as she looked down and for a second caught my eye. She must have looked at hundreds, at thousands of people during her procession through the city. But for the tiny moment she looked at me, I felt as if I was the only person in the world. Then she was gone, her mount stepping across the bridge to the castle, followed by more solemn-faced Niathi. Security, I guessed. As the last of the parade finished crossing the bridge and rode underneath the archway in the castle walls, a flag was raised on a pole from the highest tower of the castle. It was of gold crown, on a background of royal blue, edged with more gold. As the breeze caught it and it fluttered open in the sun, the crowd clapped and cheered. The Queen had arrived. End of chapter 19. Yeah.